Welcome to the Strategy Skills Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Safarova, and the show is brought to you by our firm, firmsconsulting.com, the team behind strategytraining.com. And today we have with us a very special guest, Scott Harris, who is a person who have built a very successful business in New York. And I'm looking forward to having this discussion. More than $2 billion in sales under his belt. Very few people can say that. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
So let's start with your story. Maybe you could just bring us up to date how you ended up being where you are today, focusing on what you're focusing on today.
I think a lot of people can relate to this, Chris. I would say that my real estate business that I started 22 years or so was very accidental. It started, my stepmother said to me as I was scrambling to figure out how do I stay in New York. I was in the music world. It was time for me to switch gears. And my stepmom said to me, Scott, I think you'd be a great real estate agent. I really didn't have any other ideas. I went and got my real estate license, which is something you have to do to get started professionally. And it was like everything I had ever done in my life professionally and otherwise seemed to be stacking on. It was a skill that was really perfect for the way that I operate and the way that I ran a real estate business. And it just grew and grew over the last 2 decades. And I was able to get really much clearer about how I do it differently than a lot of people, how I sort of put a lot of things first that a lot of people don't even think to put at all. And it's been a real journey of figuring out via a lot of mistakes, frankly. But it's been a joy to get to know my clients and help them really move forward in their lives.
Scott, and tell us a little more about being a musician before you became a real estate agent and where your mind was in terms of what you actually wanted to do with your life before your stepmom told you, you know what, maybe you should be a real estate agent.
Well, let me just say, Chris, that I've always, whatever I've done in my life, I bring my whole self in. I'm 110% kind of a person. So I was in college. I was performing in an a cappella group in an Ivy League school. Most of these guys went on to do lots of things in the professional world. I decided to join a professional vocal group out of college. So I wouldn't say it was to the consternation of my parents, but they had just paid for a college education. But I was learning and doing the music business, putting bands on the road, producing concerts and performing. And it was great. We were building a business. We were entrepreneurs. We were just like figuring it out and growing a fan base and all the things that if you took the music part out, it was just growing a business. At the same time, I loved performing so much. We did about 1,000 shows together in a very short period of time. We really took that type A mentality and applied it to bands. We were just on the road and performing all the time. And through a series of transitional moments, I realized it was time for me to consider the next step in my life, which was a move from Boston, where that band was based, to New York. I always had loved New York. So, was in terms of shifting gears from being a musician, which I loved being on stage, but I was always doing kind of 2 jobs at the same time. It felt like a very natural transition to move into a different business. And frankly, I was fumbling around for about a year trying to figure out what was this thing. It wasn't like I went straight from music to real estate. It was a series of figuring out what I didn't want to do. I started doing some ad sales. I was great at it, but I didn't like it. I tried to open a new office for the music business that I had been working for. It felt too lonely. I was just working sales on the phone. But it was a series of fits and starts. And ultimately, it felt like the right move. It didn't feel like, I was giving up something. It felt like it was time to sort of let something go, if that makes sense.
So you become a real estate agent, and that is a very tough space. So much competition. Take us to those early days and up to that point when you felt, okay, I'm starting to figure it out. I know what I need to focus on.
The early days of my real estate business I was really lucky in the sense that the web was just starting to emerge as a means of finding new clients. We had great training at the company that I started working for, and we used Craigslist, which, now it seems so crazy that you would advertise and find clients on something that's so rudimentary. but I had a good system in place to sort of do business development in a big city where lots of people, we were the gatekeepers for what at the time were rental properties, which you can actually make a living doing that. The light bulb came on about a year. I was really good at it. I knew how to do one thing, which was work very hard day in and day out. And I just applied that. I ended up getting an early version of what wasn't connected to the web, but everybody 20 something years ago remembers the Palm Pilot. I'm an ADHD guy. I knew I needed systems in my life to stay organized. I was really good at writing everything into, storing everything and keeping it. And I learned that from the music business where I had a CRM that I was tracking everything on my computer at the office. So the light bulb really came on about a year and a half in when I realized I can't hustle like this forever doing rental business. I knew I wanted to get into sales, and all of a sudden it was a people business more than a transaction business for me, Chris. And that's when the light bulb said, wait a minute, I care about these people. I want to see them succeed. And I got to know them, and the intuitive side of my brain started to kick in. All of the people skills that I had started to kick in. It wasn't just a hustle. It wasn't just about making money. It was about serving people. And that's really when I said, okay, there's something here.
So talk to us about this transition, renting, and then you're shifting to focus on sales, which is different business and requires different skill set. How did you get yourself skilled up? And what did you uncover were the key things you had to be really good at?
It's a good question. And the transition there from rentals to sales, it really did require a shift from me to them. I had to get out of the way. I remember, and I'm one of these people who keeps a journal. So in my early days, I can go back and see who is this person who was starting in real estate. And it was all about me and, okay, I need to make money. And if you're going to take me away from what I was doing, because what I forgot to mention is that I thought instead of transitioning, this real estate thing was fun, but it wasn't, it still felt like maybe I had one foot in music, kind of lurking in the back. I thought, I'm going to become a music engineer, an audio engineer. So I started taking classes at an audio engineering school. I was going to be that guy and, behind the deck, the recording in the studio. So I was taking classes there in the morning, starting at 8 a.m, and then I would do a full day of real estate work. And I just remember feeling like this is all about me. And I was building pipeline. I realized I'm not going to be on the street. I could make a living doing this. I had enough runway where when I started getting into the sales, it realized, okay, I helped someone buy a $200,000 studio apartment, which seems in a lot of markets, that's like a house, but here it's like a room. And that was such a rewarding experience that I said, wait a minute, I can do this more. I can do the advertising. I know how to market. I've always been a marketer. And so it was like bit by bit. It wasn't like it worked all at once. Every single thing clicked. It was like trying different ways of marketing, networking. I would say a lot of my business came from just constantly meeting and being out and talking to people. It was a natural extension of my inner desire. I'm really a curious person. I like to help people. So at the early days, it wasn't necessarily helping people in real estate. It was just making matches. Like I like to say, I was like the bartender without the bar. Like people would just come and like pour their heart out, and I'd say, oh, you should meet this person. You should meet this person. So that natural inclination to matchmake was there already. And I just felt like I added value in people's lives. And then the real estate business started to come from everywhere. And it was a joy. It was like, I did something good for someone and they wanted to help me as well. It was this real reciprocal, positive. It wasn't a zero-sum game. It was just like everybody can win here. That was the shift. Before it was a hustle. I was grabbing. It was that grabby sort of survival energy, and it became more of an attitude of abundance.
It became rewarding for you, well beyond money. So you taking classes becoming related to music. Do you feel that there was a dream there that kept pulling you back?
I did it for a year, And then I was paired up. I met an incredible guy named Kirk Yano, who was, if for anybody who loves old school hip hop, was the audio engineer for Public Enemy's massive hit, Fear of a Black Planet, back in the early 90s. And I was able to work for him. And it was with everything in my life where there's been a transition moment, I've always said, I need to do it to know whether it's something I want to do. And I went and did it. I was working in the studio. I was sweeping the floors, and I was good. I knew that the ladder was there to work my way up. And I just found that I wasn't that passionate about doing it. So I satisfied my curiosity that this wasn't going to be the thing I wanted to do forever. And then I felt like satisfied. I'm like, okay, I'm good at this real estate thing, and let me just lean in full tilt. Because it felt really fun. I love New York. I had been on the road for 6.5 years, and here I was in one place, and I never felt like this burning need that I had to get out of here. I felt like New York is just churning with energy and new people and new ideas. And for all those reasons, it drives some people crazy, but I thrived on it. And I really I've loved being here for the whole time I've been here, as challenging as it is sometimes, or smelly in the summer, or whatever you want to say. It's a great place for me.
It is definitely a very special place. So much energy and so many opportunities for someone who wants to do something with their life, but also contribute at much higher level. That is an important piece for things to really start growing for them. So things starting to progress for you. The pipeline, people feel that they're grateful, they want to help you back. What did you feel were some of the key things you had to learn at that point to build a system, to build a team, so it becomes more than just you running your business of a one-person real estate agent?
What I had to learn was that there's certain things that I'm really good at, and there are many things that I'm not. I think you have to sometimes do all the different jobs to know, okay, here are the things that I'm good at. Here are the things I need to delegate. We're talking about a period of a few years when I was slowly building my business. Any real estate professional will tell you it usually takes a few years before you really start to, where you start working with buyers. Eventually you start to get confident and you can work with sellers. So they're very distinct skill sets. Working with buyers is very entrepreneurial. There's no structure. You're just following up and doing something. Whereas it's a business process to work on the listing side, working with sellers. So eventually you start to realize where are all the different parts of the system. And what I can say is that I knew I needed to bring in an assistant, because I needed someone to help me kind of sit down and do all of these things so I could continue to work on my business, and then also working in the business, doing the things that I was good at. But it took years of lots and lots of 7-day weeks. And I was used to it. I'd been on the road with bands. Everybody else was working and everybody else was taking time off. I would be working on holidays and on the weekends. So it didn't feel foreign to me to just work all the time. But I realized that I was quite good at the business development, inspiring people to move forward, to get out of their comfort zone, to be a little bit provocative. And so the more I could put myself into those positions with people, the better. Whereas operationally, that was something that that's not really in my zone of genius, as they say. So as soon as I could see a way around it, I probably couldn't afford it at the time, but I met my wife, we got married, and all of a sudden I needed to have a better system. So I brought in an assistant. I burned her out completely, Chris, like right away, like within a year. She said, look, I love you, Scott, but I've got to go. This is too much. So kind of slowly building the team. And it was lots of one step back, 2 steps forward, or it was back and forth where things were not always perfect. But to build out the sort of the standard operating procedures for a real estate business, it's quite different depending on the skill set of the agent. There's no one way to do it. I knew that I needed to be out and about as much as possible and delegate a lot of the doing of the behind the scenes stuff to others. Whereas some people are good at operations and they need a little bit more assistance on the business development.
And what were some of the key ways to find new clients at that time?
I feel really lucky that I went to college at the University of Pennsylvania, which is just down the road, 99 miles from New York. So I felt like I plugged into my college network, and frankly, I plugged into lots of different groups of people. I'm someone that I'm a naturally curious person. So it kind of came from those kinds of networks. I got involved in philanthropy. And so in those networks where I was doing good alongside someone, business came that way. Also just the constant follow-up very early on. I knew I wanted to give back with content. So I realized it was time to start a newsletter and sort of give people an insight into what I do. So email marketing was a very early piece of my work, and that business came from that. And then really like just a consistent trying of other marketing initiatives that I was just talking to someone that in most real estate markets, somebody puts a sign out in front of their house and that person simply gets calls. Hey, I saw you listed so-and-so's house. Can you come over and look at my house? In New York, we don't have that. So it's all relationship driven. It's not listing driven. And such a complicated market to do business in real estate here because there are a lot of unique features that you need to be much more savvy and strategic. So those personal relationships that you build over time and the trust you build because you care about them, that was really the biggest and always has been the biggest source. But like I said, I have, for better or worse, I just want to help people. And I'm the kind of person, I just had built this massive network of random people through music and everything else that my mind works. In the music business, I was putting colleges with artists and just always matching people. I'd help somebody get a job. I'd help someone find their biggest client. Those kinds of things. Ultimately, I like to say it's like I put deposits in the bank of the universe to get a little woo-woo, right? Like the business just came back from all sorts of random places because I was constantly marketing and chatting about the fun stories that are inherent to real estate.
This is what we need more in the world, actually. More people focusing on giving, and then they will receive back something great, maybe not from the same person, but it definitely happens.
Indeed. Yeah, I found that to be true.
In terms of ways to generate new business, how did it change from that time, early years, to now?
Well, now we're significantly more strategic about how we do it. I mean, I was at a big box brokerage firm for almost 20 years, and I had an operations person who I still have, who's incredible, who came with me when we launched Magnetic. And so we go through and we're, okay, here's our print marketing, here's our web marketing, here's our social media marketing. A lot of it evolves with the marketing landscape, of course, but much of it's additive, and we're just much more considerate about how we do it. It's not throwing everything against the wall, but saying, okay, it's about a variety of marketing and a consistency of marketing. And what I tell my team and my agents is that you need to bring your whole self into your business. You're an interesting, smart person that, a three-dimensional person that has a lot to offer the world, and the way you are in the world and the friends you've gathered and that all of that skill that got you here, it will serve you. That you're not just this cardboard cutout of a real estate agent that's on the side of on a bus stop sticker. Hey, call me with the big toothy smile. That's not. That's if you think of yourself that way, then people will think of you that way. But the way we're strategic now is really the biggest difference. And of course, we're running a business, so we have to look at our P&L and decide, where we're going to allocate things, do more of the things that work, and do less of the things that don't. But it is in some ways it's a small business until it's a big business. All of a sudden, we're doing $140 million of sales a year, and one of the top teams in the country. And yet it's still very relational. So it has one foot in business and another foot in the personal. And that I don't see how that changes.
Scott. And of course, there are tough times when you have to navigate and make sure that your business survives. Can you take us back to one of those times and what you had to do to help your company survive and thrive?
I want to laugh about it because we've had, if you are in a real estate business or equities business, any kind of a business, there are business cycles. The first big challenge was 2008, 2009. And I've often said I could have just gone to the beach, gone to the south of France. My wife is a French speaker. We could have just left. That's how little business was happening. And our business was off by like 80, 90%. And, what did I do at that time? I studied a lot of Tony Robbins and I set goals and I really visioned quite a bit to see like what this business is going to look like on the other side. We had one child, which is like, oh my gosh, I'm married and I have a kid now. Like, how is this going to work? But we were living within our means, thank God. And we just navigated it day by day. I think the bigger one that almost everybody can relate to is 5 years ago during COVID, when in New York, our business literally was illegal. We weren't allowed to do what we do. So early March, we get an announcement that you can't show properties anymore. And we didn't know how long it was going to last. And I remember getting on the phone with my good friend, Jeff, who was doing this incredible program in Philadelphia to provide small business loans. And he was marketing it and it was really helping people. And he said, how are you doing? And I said, well, I have no business. All of a sudden, I was the first time in 20 years I'd never had nothing to do. And, a lot of people just watched Netflix. I started figuring out ways to help people. And I told him, I said, I'm going to throw this up to God and be like, you take care of the money. I'm going to worry about what I can do to help people. I'm shocked that how at peace I was. It was really great. I had a wonderful time with my family. I mean, maybe it's gauche to say like it was some of the best times I've ever had, but I wrote lots of music. I built a program to help about 5,000 people in New York get rid of all their junk out of their apartments. We had a whole program. We delivered 100,000 pounds of donations to Goodwill, New York, New Jersey here to help people clean out their homes. And we felt like we added just tons of value to them and to the brokerage community by just being a cheerleader for what was going on. That was probably the most rewarding thing, is that we came out of that with 5,000 new people who we helped so much. And our business just went like hockey stick from there out of COVID to where we are today.
Was there a moment where you were worried, scared, and then you somehow pulled yourself together, or you just felt calm and you knew what to do?
I think there's always a moment or not even a moment, there are many sleepless nights. I think I found peace faster during the COVID times because I got to see my family for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And I think the whole country was in it together in some way. Felt like we're all in this. But at other times, some people are successful and some people aren't. There were businesses during COVID that just exploded in the best way. And, for me, I think at any given time, as a salesperson in real estate, you almost have to recreate your business every single year. So I would say for many, many years, it would get towards the end of the year and I would start having panic attacks. How am I going to do this again next year? Even though the evidence in front of me was that you have a pipeline, Scott, and things are going to be closing in the early part of the year. But I would say it's years of work, and whether it's therapists or meditation, or I'm an avid runner. I have a wonderful wife who I talk through these things. I have a lot of different, I think, very healthy ways of getting through these things. But it's an ongoing challenge, and it's a battle sometimes with the voices in your head just to keep calm. And sometimes you got to step away and go, hey, is this true? All this negative, you have like a real negative voice in your head. You have to step away and try to smack it around or just laugh at it.
Exactly. Was there a failure in your career that you are deeply grateful for?
A failure? Sure. I mean, I fail all the time. there are just so many deals that go sideways where you're pitching business and you think it's going to lead. I was working with a developer where this was meant to lead to hundreds of millions of dollars of sales, and we got off on the wrong foot and the whole door closed. And yet time and time again, when those deals will flop, we end up having our best year after that. So I just think there's so much failure built into a sales business that it's almost impossible to say one, but I will identify one. We were the lead. I was part of the sales team for a $350 million sellout tower near Madison Square Park, which is where Danny Meyer did the first Shake Shack. Okay. Just to give people a sense of where it was. This is where the Statue of Liberty was sitting on its side, all the pieces, before it went to be put into the harbor. And we sold the entire, all but one or two apartments. We sold the whole tower out, and we were waiting for it to close. And then they came to me. I had bought a unit. I'd signed a contract to buy a unit from the developer, thinking I was going to flip it. I was going to flip the contract and make a lot of money. And they came to me and said, "Hey, Scott, we want to buy your contract. We're going to give you $100,000 to walk away from your contract." And in my hubris, I said, "Actually, I'm not going to do that. I want to hold on to the contract." I got greedy, and they fired me from the project the next day. And then to add insult to injury, the entire project went belly up. They didn't end up finishing it themselves. And the Attorney General for the state of New York said, give every owner and everybody who has a contract signed who wants to get out of their deal, they can get out of it. So I ended up losing money on the time I was there rather than making $100,000. I learned more in that year of working, that entire time of working on that, than probably anything else that I did that made money. So that was probably the best failure.
And also such a great case study for building relationships with clients, managing relationships with clients, having some kind of conflict when you're dealing with a client. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So you recently wrote a book. Tell us about it. What was that moment when you decided, I have to write it?
Well, the book is called The Pursuit of Home. And if you have been listening to this, you realize that, I'm very focused on the people in the transaction. Now, of course, I've sold $2 billion of real estate for buyers and sellers, and I am numbers. I have a great facility with numbers, and all I want to do is help people make great purchases and make money when they sell and all that. But what I realized, I was actually in Vegas. I was speaking at a conference. I was jet lagged, and I listened to a lot of podcasts and I listened to a lot of interviews. And there was a conversation between Joseph Campbell, the author and professor, and Bill Moyers. It's called The Power of Myth. And what it talked about was tracing the stories that you see on Disney and the stories that make up a lot of the Hollywood movies you see. It's about the hero's journey. And what I realized was that the home buying experience is it's itself a hero's journey, and that you, the home buyer, is going through that journey. And I said, wow, I've been writing stories about my real estate experience, but I didn't know what to do with them. And it was this organizing principle. And what I came to realize is that there really is this emotional world underneath the transaction that everybody goes through and no one talks about it. I went and did some research. Has anybody written a book about this? There really wasn't anything that described the actual experience of going to buy a home. Forget the transaction. That's like the nanometer layer across the top. It's all of the emotion. So I said, if I can write a guide that helps people with the real experience of buying a home and what they can do to have a better experience, because I've helped a lot of people do it. I've helped thousands of people. That will be something that will really be a value add to the world. And so I was just called to do it. It occurred to me, I gotta sit down and write this book. And so I started getting up at 5 a.m. and writing it before the day. And eventually I got a literary agent and a publisher decided they loved the idea, and the book's going to be out in the world soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What do you want people to take away? So for someone who reads the book, what are the key things you want them to really internalize?
There's an intentionality. There's a way you can go and buy a home that enables you to get to know yourself better. And you can do it in a way that is painful, or you can do it in a way that is much more fun, nourishing, and ends up with a much better result in the end. So if there's a takeaway, it's that people need to take the time to get to know themselves, their own communication style, and then spend the time to interview and find a real estate agent, because 90% of people hire a real estate agent. So take the time to hire a real estate agent that speaks their language, that gets them, that helps them feel like they're seen and heard and understood, because then they can get comfortable and then they can go and really focus on what is only they can do, which is learn what they would love. And more people will they'll spend more time planning a vacation than they will hiring this person that's going to help them make this. We talk about, oh, this is the biggest investment. Sure, it's a biggest investment, but forget the investment for a minute. This is a place where life is happening for you. You're going to spend anywhere from 8 hours of sleeping a night to, like, you work from home. You're going to spend probably your whole day there. So why not? So the takeaway I want to have for people is that there's a whole set of things that you will go through when you go to buy a home that you should be prepared for. And you get to know yourself, hire an agent that supports you. There are lots of ways. The way I go through the book is there are a lot of unconventional ways to uncover what you really would love in your home. And there are a lot of things that are going to pop up, these roadblocks that are self-generated. You think they're from the outside, but a lot of them are self-generated. And so how you get through this emotional world, how you get through this hero's journey is up to you. And I hope that the book gives you a lot of practical advice on how to navigate that.
And also someone who can help you navigate all the things you don't see when you just look at the house or an apartment. Even if you come 3 times in different times of the day, a lot of things you will not know. Some of the information provided will not be correct. Someone who could help with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that a lot of people will have this experience. They have a checklist that they think is what they want. And then they go into a home that ticks all those boxes. And they're like, wait a minute, I don't like this home. So, what I argue is that there's no free will in real estate. You actually think you know what you want, but you don't. And so how you actually almost like bypass your thinking part and figure out how to connect to the feeling part is the work, because you have to uncover what you would love. So I offer some strategies on how you're going to bypass all your preconceived notions to get to the place where you can really learn what you would love. It's a learning process all the way through. And if you have unresolved issues around money or trust or all these things, they're going to come up in your search. So it's not about the money. It's about how you feel about it and how you feel about the house. There's so much, it's really like the psychology of real estate, if I could put it in that way, and it's real.
And it reminded me this words from Steve Jobs, like with all matters of the heart, you will know it when you see it.
Right, unless you get in your own way.
Yes, you have to.
It requires you to peel away a few layers sometimes, because you're sometimes not willing to admit that you love something because it doesn't fit your idea of what you're supposed to love. So there's so much there, and you need a real steady hand to guide you.
Could you share with us one of those unconventional ways to uncover what you love, what you will love?
Of course, the one that I found both the challenge for a newer agent and the scary part for a buyer is making offers, because then the rubber is meeting the road. It gets very real very quickly. But at the same time, there's nothing in the process that uncovers how you actually feel than when you make an offer, because you make the offer and then the seller responds to it. And when they respond, hey, we accepted your offer, or, here's a counter, or we have 10 people who also are bidding the same number. When you get that information and your body says, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I love this place, that's the truth. Or if you get a reaction, wait a minute, I don't have any feeling, it's like so-so. That reaction is the truth. And so what I say is the way to shortcut your thinking part is to make an offer. And that, of course, in every market, they say, well, you can't just make an offer because there's legal ramifications of making an offer. I've heard from many smart people who say, look, in my market, it's $5,000 to commit, in what they call earnest money, to commit to a home. If you're buying $1 million house, is it worth $5,000 to have the time to be thinking about whether you love it or not? Maybe it's worth $5,000, or I've heard it sometimes, some places it's even less in those situations. But the bottom line is that making an offer is the best way of uncovering what you would really like. And you'll learn more from that than almost any other thing you can do in the home buying process.
What are some of the key mistakes that buyers make when they buy?
The one mistake that many buyers will make is they treat this process like their own business. So they're a doctor and they handle their business in a certain way, or they're in finance and they negotiate in this very aggressive way. They think that that's how business works, and it often backfires. They're very laid back. We'll see tomorrow, and then they lose a property because they're too easygoing about it. Or we're putting a deadline on our offer of end of day today, and the seller says, I don't like this person, they're too aggressive. Because it's business and personal mixed together, that it often people need to really stop thinking that they are experts in real estate. I like to say it's like, hold my beer, honey, let me go do this. Like they read a few books about buying a home and then they go do it. But it's like they're bringing, what's that old saying from that movie in the 80s, The Untouchables? They're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like they don't know what they don't know. And if you're only doing this every 7-10 years, the mistake is when you think you know what you're doing because you are successful in your own business.
Very true. What about sellers? What are the key mistakes they make?
I have a lot of compassion for sellers because, in many cases, depending on the market, sometimes they're losing money. Sometimes they don't want to sell because they're moving into assisted living. Sometimes it's an estate. They're selling it for their parents, and there's a lot of emotion bound up in that. I think the biggest mistake that sellers will make is that they think their house is so special that it's not affected by market conditions. And so they're reluctant to look at it in the context of a market. And buyers ultimately treat it like a home in a market. What is it worth? It's worth what's based on where things are going on around them. And they often think it's so special that they don't have to paint it. I mean, people, when they go to sell a car, will go and get it detailed. They'll clean it out, they'll vacuum it. And people who are selling the biggest asset they have, and they're not willing to do touch-up painting and things like that, that can be a real impediment to helping them sell.
Of course. What are your thoughts for someone listening to us right now? They already have a home that they really like or love, and they are working very hard. Let's say they are in tech or working for a large bank, and they're considering real estate as investment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, take your time. There's no rush. Some people, it's often get to know your own investment style. How active do you want to be with this investment? Getting to know your own, do you want to set it and forget it? Well, then don't go buy an Airbnb investment property because it's very active management. It's almost like a second job. For somebody who is interested in set it and forget it, maybe you want to invest across sectors where you're a limited partner investor in a fund or a limited partner investment in a number of different multifamily properties, but study the landscape a little bit, get to know agents either in those markets or agents who could advise you. It's a great asset class for a lot of people, but frankly, it's not for everyone. And it often, you have to be willing to lose your investment. A lot of times people who bought things 5 years ago, who were in a situation where mortgage rates were lower and now they're much higher, they're not seeing the exit that they expected. So right now, it just so happens if it makes financial sense right now, today, when we're recording this, it's likely to make great sense in the long term. So if you're just a new investor, I would say take a look at it. And it's also just important to see a track record, to talk to the people who've invested with this person before. But more than anything, be patient with this. It is not a get rich quick scheme. You really should be methodical. And like I'm advising in the book, take your time to get to know the people that you're going to get into business with. I think you'll be much happier when you do it that way.
Scott, and I want to wrap up with one or two of my favorite questions. Number one is, over the last few years, or even your entire lifetime, what were 2-3 aha moments, realizations that you feel comfortable sharing that really changed the way you look at life or the way you look at business?
Ooh, that's a big one. 2 or 3 realizations. I think one realization has to do with being kinder to myself. That I think for many years I was really the person that was most hard on me was me. And that got me to a certain place. But then I realized, hey, there's another way to do this, that the more I could maybe, quote unquote, like love on myself, the more I could be compassionate and caring towards my clients. So I think that's one huge one for me. I think and this is sort of in the world now, I don't talk about this all that much. The second one I would say was, for me, I stopped drinking about 6 years ago, and I realized that that was like my go-to thing every night, to like have a few drinks, and letting go of that opened up. I really think that was the biggest thing I ever did for my life. It opened up all sorts of doors and allowed me to be a lot a better parent, a better husband, a better person for my team, more patient. It just opened up everything. That was a huge realization that it was time to move on from that. And I think the third was that, you don't have to be married, of course, you can have a partner. But I think for me, it was just realizing how amazing my wife was and what a support, how important it is to have people in your life who really, truly, deeply believe in you. And you can find that in a partner, you can find that in family, you can find that in friends, but to surround yourself with people who believe in you. And by the way, this is true in the real estate search, that you need to find someone from whom you can borrow belief when times are tough. And when you're buying a home, it's so scary, it's so full of fear and doubt when you're a home buyer, that finding that agent who knows that you're going to make it happen, that believes it lock, stock, and barrel, that it's going to happen, having that kind of fundamental belief in you and your success is what carries you through all the way across the finish line.
Thank you for sharing this. And are there 1, 2, 3 success habits, so to say, that you feel really fundamental for you? It gives you the strength to do big things.
I think sometimes you realize that the good habits you've built are good habits when you stop doing them. So one habit is a daily meditation practice. For me, I start my day, and that starting your day with an hour of no email, and I got away from that a little bit over the last 6 months to a year. And I realize how powerful it is to really have that sense of calm and purpose at the beginning of the day. So I think, for me, that's a huge habit that I'm reminded constantly plays a huge role in my life. For me, another habit is exercise. I like to run. So I've run marathons, but it's not like I'm winning any awards, but that regular healthy challenge of seeing a goal, slowly building towards it, and, this sort of unforgiving result of that, knowing like if I did the work, I have a good result. If I didn't do the work, it comes out at the end. It's a constant reminder that what you put in is what you get out. And then I think the other habit really is to have the accountability of a coach. That, I've had the same business coach for about 8 years now. And he's a wonderful guy, a guy named John Mark Shaw. Give a shout out to John. We see eye to eye on a spiritual level, but having that weekly or biweekly or monthly check-in to keep you on track when you're an entrepreneur. If Michael Jordan needed a coach, sure as heck, I know I do. Someone is to keep an eye on what you're doing, and how to make those little tweaks. That habit of staying, just having those bumpers to make sure that you don't get too far off the path, I think is a hugely important habit. If you can build that into your life, you will see the benefit.
Scott, and what did you find works best for you in terms of how often do you meet with your coach and for how long each time?
What I found is that I probably use it as a crutch a little bit to talk a little bit. I treat a little bit like therapy at the beginning of every session. Could I be more efficient with it? I'm sure I could. Thankfully, my coach hasn't, said to me, "Hey, we need to be more efficient here." But it's like you spend time with a gratitude practice. You get really clear on visioning what you're looking to build in your life and with your business. And then you're focused on what are the things we want to tackle today. And so, I think it's how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I'm a big fan of saying it's not about being efficient, it's about being effective. And so some things take as long as they take. And with the coaching, I think for me, it's probably a 2-hour session. Could it be a little bit less? Probably. And I think a lot of people will do it in an hour, but that seems to work for me.
And how often do you guys meet?
We meet weekly unless, we have some conflict. We end up meeting, I would say probably, 11 times a quarter.
Scott, thank you so much for being here. Where can our listeners learn more about you, buy your book, anything you want to share?
If people want to check out the book, they can go to pursueyourhome.com. And if they just do a search for The Pursuit of Home, they can find the book. It's being distributed by Simon Schuster, and it's out there through Ben Bella Books. So, delighted to talk to people about it. And they can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. If they just look up Scott Harris, they're going to find me.
Scott, thank you again. I really appreciate you being so open and generous during this hour together.
Thanks for having me. It's been great, Chris.
Our guest today was Scott Harris. Check out his book, The Pursuit of Home. This episode is brought to you by strategytraining.com. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. It's a free download we prepared for you, and you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. You can also get McKinsey and BCG winning resume example, which is a actual resume that got offers from both of those firms. And you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. And lastly, you can get 9 Leaders in Action, which is one of our books. And you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/gift. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to connect with you all next time.